Welcome to She's a Full-On Monet, a digital lifestyle magazine for women. Every week, our editor-in-chief, Kelly Castillo, along with Megan Block and special guests, participate in a deep dive discussion about recent articles and topics we have covered. We invite you to become part of our community where everyone's welcome. You can totally sit with us.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to She's a Full-On Monet. I am your host, Kelly. I have with me here, as always, Megan.
Hello. Hi, Kelly.
I love that we're both wearing blue today.
I know.
I felt kind of a day.
It's like chilly. I don't know. This was also like the only thing that was in my closet that looked semi-presentable and kind of nice. But I feel like we had this weird like connection when we were preparing. So
yeah, and it's like a rainy day here too. So
I know. I like it. We need rain. I don't feel like we've had rain here in a while, but
no, we haven't. So guys, today we're doing something a little bit different. We are going to talk about all the myths surrounding the menstrual cycle. And I think that's a really interesting topic. Hopefully other people agree.
Unique.
Yeah. I mean, as women, as anyone who, menstruates, I feel like now it's not just, you can't just say as women because really like there's trans people who menstruate also. So to anyone who gets their period, I think you kind of figure after, especially like at my age, like, okay, I've learned everything there is to know. I have all the information because it happens to my body on a regular basis. But I think there's always, always more information out there, always things that maybe you've always heard and just assumed that, yes, okay, that's true, but could be a myth. So today we're going to figure it out.
Yeah. Personally, my cycle and what it's done and all that has changed with my age and my body and having kids and stress and all this stuff. So for me, the entire thing as a whole is a mystery. So, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like it's always like, once I figure it out, kind of like parenting, it switches it up on me. And then I'm like, oh, learning, figuring it out new. So I really think that this topic is so helpful because there are a lot of things out there that don't Google anything, but it's good to decipher what is a myth and what is true and what is not, especially with our body when we're just kind of like going with the flow. Sorry, but we're going with the flow and just seeing, and, our body changes. So, it's good to bear out the facts here and figure out what's real and what's not,
Yeah. And I think, what's real for me might not be what's real for you, might not be what's real for the next person. So our bodies are so unique and individual. That's for one. But I want to say, first of all, before we even dive in, that I grew up in the 80s and early 90s. And that was a time where talking about your menstrual cycle, talking about having your period was not acceptable. It was not something that was done. Even between my closest girlfriends at sleepovers and stuff, it was not something that we would ever share with each other. And we had those little tiny little tampon and pad packages that we could just slip in our pocket or in our little bag. And if we picked up our purse to take it with us to the bathroom, we were like, oh my God, everyone's going to know. It was such a big hush hush. Nobody talks about this kind of a situation. And I grew up in a small town, but it was California. So it's not like it was, middle of nowhere. And I feel like maybe it was just the time. But it wasn't something that anybody ever talked about. You definitely didn't see it even alluded to in movies or TV ever. I mean, if there was a commercial for a product, they were just dancing in a field. And I mean, if you weren't a girl, you didn't even know what they were talking about.
Totally.
But
it's like a side note that it was like a tampon commercial.
Right. And now the commercials where they're literally pouring liquid on the thing and they're like, look, this is what it
it's so to the point now that it's almost, I don't want to say don't want to say it's too much because I'm totally for it. But when I'm, eating potato chips with my, husband at night, and it's the commercial, he's like,
it's like,
go.
plug the hole. We're like, yeah, we got it.
We understand. Even the men are like, dude, like, we get it, but like, so I'm all for like,
yeah, I'm waiting.
We've come.
I'm waiting for the day where they stop using the blue liquid and they switch to red liquid. And we're all like, okay, we're you're done. You're done.
We went from like, do not say a thing about it to like, here it freaking is. And, like
that's what I want to talk about a little bit because, okay, obviously this is a supernatural thing. Mm-hmm. It happens to every genetically or, biologically female body ever, pretty much.
We don't really get a say in it.
We don't get a say in it, but
to us,
it's a shared experience that we are all having. And yet I wasn't able to talk about it with my girlfriends when I was growing up. I mean, if you had asked me what age my closest best friend, who I talked to all day, every single day, got her period, I don't know if I could tell you.
Did you, you have an older sister?
I have an older sister. She never spoke to me.
How did that dynamic? Because you didn't have like a mother figure. So you needed your sister to guide you.
She never mentioned it to me. She never like gave me any instruction, told me what to expect. There was never any conversation.
Same with, I had a mom in my life every day and she showed me the pad stitch, never showed me anything after that. And it felt like, I feel like maybe the parents back then, correct me from, because I was 80s, 90s too. Same, we never talked about it, but like, I feel like they thought maybe like the health, like the school system would come in and be like, hey ladies, this is how you put a tampon in. Like, I don't know where they thought we would learn this.
I don't remember getting a lot of sex education in school. I think my PE teacher in the locker room sold pads and tampons. She had a little side business where she would sell them.
She did
snacks and pads and tampons. And
entrepreneurship in that lady.
I swear to God, amazing. She would answer our questions if we had any or whatever, but that was literally the only person I knew who was open to talking about it. And so but
it was like if you had a question basis, it wasn't like, we are going to discuss it today in PE. We're going to separate the boys from the girls and we're going to discuss, your bodies.
If I had any kind of sex education or body education in high school, I have chosen to block it out because I have absolutely no
It's probably totally horrific, but I'm just trying to figure out where our parents thought or where society at that time, 80s, 90s, I was born in 86. So, 90s, like even when I got it, I felt like, oh my God, I felt so embarrassed. And I never talked to my friends about it. Not like it's a hot topic to chat about over,
no, but
over recess, but you're just, it felt taboo. It felt
exactly.
Taboo
it was very taboo when I was growing up and I was raised by a single dad. So I wasn't expecting for him to talk to me about it at home. I understand why that would have been an uncomfortable conversation, but I just want to just kind of give a little bit of recognition to how incredibly far we've come.
Oh, yeah.
My daughters had absolutely no problem coming to me and asking me very graphic questions about what was going on or what they could expect. All of their friends were discussing it openly among girls and boys. No, I mean, there is absolutely zero taboo left about this. They will stand up and say, oh, I think I'm getting my period. I got to go to the bathroom. Like in front of everyone, they don't care. There's nothing left that feels like it shouldn't have been feeling shameful to me to talk about it growing up, but it did. And
did you talk to your girls at all before that time of their life came about so that they were prepared for it?
Not really, no. I mean, I didn't say, oh, hey girls, this is gonna, I didn't hide it
because
either.
I'm genuinely curious. My daughter just turned 10 and it happens to me. And I'm like, I lost my mom before I had kids. So these questions I was never able to ask her when the proper time to do certain things was. And I'm like, well, shoot, this is going to come up in their life and I don't want to fail them by just forgetting to mention it. So I was just genuinely curious if you.
No, I mean, it wasn't something that I didn't talk about purposely. And it wasn't something that I purposely sat them down and had to talk about. It was always open for discussion. And I think that's how I was with everything with them. So when it was time for them to get curious about this, I distinctly remember my older daughter coming to me in elementary school and telling me, hey, some of the girls at my school are talking about getting their periods. And I'm just wondering, like, when did you get yours? So I can kind of guess when I'm going to get mine. I was a little shocked when she came and just asked me that bluntly, because that would never have occurred to me to do when I was her age. And I mean, she was probably like 10 when she told me that.
Shoot, maybe I should start thinking about this.
Yeah, I mean, girls are getting their periods.
Freak out and be like, I mean, straight up transparent. I was in the middle of a cross country meet when I had my very, very first one. And I had a good friend from another school who came with me to the bathroom, who had already had hers, who helped me through it. But that was like, I don't want her to think she's dying all of a sudden, you know.
Right.
What I mean, like
girls as young as 8 are getting their periods. So it is something that we need to talk to them about early. I should have. And it just because it was never done with me, I don't think I ever.
We repeat what was done with us, and it wasn't done with me. And I don't want to do that to her on accident because it wasn't done with me, you know?
Yeah. So. And I straight up told them, you know, ask me whatever you want. I'll help you. And they did. And their friends, they have a couple of close girlfriends that they had in elementary school and middle school who had lost their mothers. They would come and ask me. I mean, I've taken those girls to Planned Parenthood to get their questions answered. I've taken them to buy bras. Like, I stepped in.
You know what it's like to need that figure.
Absolutely. I was super sympathetic to that because I had to do all that on my own and figure it out on my own. And
wow,
maybe part of it is that I'm a really private person. I don't like to talk about my business with other people. So I probably wouldn't have reached out. I probably could, if I had gone to my sister and said, hey, can you help me with this? She probably would have. I mean, she is very nurturing, but,
and it's hard for any older sibling kid to think that that's their role to fill at that age, to like come to you and be like, hey sister, this is going to happen to you, you know, because
she was when it happened to me, when I got my first period, my sister was a freshman in college and very absorbed with what was going on in her life. She had her first serious boyfriend, and she wasn't going to be worrying about me and what was going on with my body at all.
Oh,
but, I know that like I went to like the health clinic in my town, and I had heard some girls at my school talking about it, and I went there and I asked them questions, but honestly, like it was awkward, and it would have been better to have
an awkward conversation for anyone to have. Yeah.
And my grandmother very much acted as a mother to me, and it never occurred to me to ask her anything. And in my brain, she passed away at 92, and that was in she was 92 years old, and that was in 2017. So when I was a teenager, she was probably only in her 60s, but in my head, she was so old. Like I couldn't imagine her ever even like, what would she was so disconnected in my mind from like a woman in her female, like reproductive age. So it would never have occurred to me to go ask my elderly, I thought she was elderly. She was only in her 60s grandmother.
Oh my gosh. No way. I would go to the library before I would ask my grandmother and just read about it. I don't know why. I just feel like
I do remember having a conversation with her in my later teenage years about periods. And she told me some funny stories about how, she was the youngest in her family and very much a surprise, and kind of like a change of life baby, as they call them. And she would tell me that no one talked to her about it because her sisters had all married and moved out of the house by the time she was a teenager. And they had to wear these like huge pads that were like diapers, but they had a belt. So you had to put the belt on because there was no adhesive, like stickiness to it. Like you couldn't stick it on like we have the tape now. So you had to wear a belt that like suspended it in place. And she said it picture a sumo wrestler's diaper. That's basically what it was. And then you would, and it was very ineffective, and like you had to wash it out and reuse it. Like it was.
Lord. No,
we're talking about the 1930s.
I don't
even about the 1930s.
It's like, just assume that any story from that era about that situation is going to be horrific, because it's like, we are as modern as we are. And, it's not like amazing, our choices. So
the thing is, like,
think about way back then. It was terrible and gross. Oh, no.
But in today's age, I see people talking about periods on social media, not like saying, "Oh, hey, guess what? I have my period," but like they'll be like, "Oh, I live in an RV and I camp from," and the people will straight up ask them, how do you handle your period? Like, they're not, there's no shyness about it anymore. I see it on TV shows, people talking about it. I mean, I remember watching Naked and Afraid with the kids when they were teenagers, and we were all like, I wonder if they're going to show the girl getting her period because it's 30 days. Like, how are they going to handle that?
That's funny. Yeah, I remember on Bridgerton when one of the characters, you know, they found out she was pregnant because they actually said out loud in the show, like, you haven't bled, you know, even that, like, it's just like, just to even bring it up as a subject, you know, I see it on TikTok and social media about like almost like glamorizing the idea of it because of how amazing it is as women that we do this and that we're able to do this, and how we need to glorify it and not make it a taboo or something to be ashamed of, you know, and like you get all kinds of stuff online and in media and stuff like, and I think it's cool.
But the pendulum has swung so far from we must not speak of this all the way to like we're talking about this in casual dinner conversation.
Yeah, I know. I think it's all based on, I mean, I honestly never talk about the subject with my friends in casual. I don't know, maybe we have other stuff to talk about.
Now, okay, I'm in my mid 40s and my sister is turning 50 this year. So now she's been telling me that she's, you know, kind of like, oh, she probably was, if she listens to this, she's going to just shoot me in the head. she's been talking to me for years.
Oh, is she a woman going through a certain, I remember that. That's the age. That was when my mom was starting.
Right. And so she's been asking me, hey, are you having any symptoms? Because I started being like premenopausal about your age.
Get it. Yeah.
And I had my annual like checkup with my OBGYN, who is a menopause specialist, by the way. And I didn't pick her for that reason. She just happens to be one. And she was asking me the same question. And she was like, oh, actually, like, no, you look like you're far from that so far. And it was interesting to me how when I get to my age, and most of my friends are going through menopause as well, because a lot of my friends are older. My husband's so much older than me that a lot of my friends are a little bit older than me or even significantly older than me. So it's a topic that is more comfortable, it feels like, for women to talk about. I mean, I've heard women joking about their hot flashes and stuff since I was a kid. Yeah. I mean, I remember like the Kathy cartoons where they talked about it. And my stepmother and other people in my life would openly talk about how they were having hot flashes or how they were having this or that menopause symptoms. Yeah. So that seems, I really wonder though, why is that such a comfortable topic for women to openly talk about without any kind of stigma, whereas the period subject was not? Obviously, they're very closely tied. So you're not comfortable admitting that you have a period.
I mean, let's get real about it. When you have it, your body starts to get bloated. You start to feel gross, like things, you have to take extra care of your body that it doesn't feel good. And I don't know anything about menopause. I don't know why it feels so much more comfortable to talk about that, but maybe it's the absence of rather than the presence of for some people that just throw them off. I'm not sure, but I just feel like you're right. Why? But also, I don't know. I'm not one to want to talk about it anyway. But if I was younger and it was a subject where it, just like your sister, if I started to feel symptoms of menopause, I would talk about that a lot with my friends. If I was pregnant and hanging around pregnant women all the time, I'd probably talk about baby stuff.
Yeah, that's the other thing. When we're pregnant, we have absolutely there's no stigma about talking about all the weird pregnancy symptoms that we have, whether it's your mucus plug or whether it's like hemorrhoids or whether it's
stuff that happens that we're just like so proud of because it's like, look what we can do. That it's like, I don't know. I feel like,
but all these things are so connected. They're all tied together. Why is all of this okay to talk about, but not it's just so interesting to me, that whole scenario. But I'm very, very glad that the younger generation is comfortable talking about this, comfortable talking about it with, like, my daughters are very open with their partners, their boyfriends, fiance, whatever, about, oh, you know, I need tampons. Can you go to the store for me? Or I'm on my period. Like there's no issue there, which, when I was growing up, there would definitely was. That was not something we talked to boys about.
I think it is what you make it, right? I think if you're open about it and you're confident and you're strong about it, and that was the environment you grew up in, or that's the environment you surround yourself with, then it's not weird to talk about, you know?
Right. And I only have exposure to my nieces and my daughters. I'm not, and their friends. I'm not exposed to like a wide variety of young girls.
You didn't
But
do
even,
like a case study on this?
no, but even like, I'm an advocate for foster kids. My current foster daughter's very open talking about it. Not just with me, but in general. So I do think it is a generational thing.
Yeah. Cool. I think it's great. I think it'll be more, I mean, who wants to feel uncomfortable when they get it for their first time? You know,
no, and
alone, who wants to feel confused or
right.
You know,
it shouldn't be that way. And this is why I think it's going to be interesting to talk about some of these myths that we're going to go over right now, because when I was younger, if some of these things were things I heard or assumed were correct, and there wasn't anybody that I could kind of say, hey, did you hear this? Is this also true? Or I wouldn't have been comfortable even asking my doctor this.
Oh my goodness.
It's different
now. You don't
now.
Feel stupid. You just,
so
would rather not.
Some of our listeners and readers may believe these myths because they've never been able to openly talk about it. But one of the first things I did when my daughters were teenagers, when I knew that they, had their periods, when I knew that they were getting to an age where they were, realistically probably going to be sexually active, I took them to my gynecologist and I sat them down and I said, I'm going to leave the room, ask her any questions that you want to ask that you would be uncomfortable asking me. And I mean, I have to say that, most of the time they said, I can ask in front of you. I'm not, but regardless, like I wanted them to have a safe space where they could ask questions that they thought might be embarrassing or that, they didn't want me to necessarily hear about their sexual activity, about birth control, about periods, whatever it is. And thankfully I have a super sweet gynecologist who has no problem doing that. But, because that's the other thing. I remember when I'd never went to a gynecologist until I was actually pregnant with my first child because I had kids so early. And I went in for my first checkup. I might have told you this. And the gynecologist that my insurance had assigned me to, because I didn't know any better, was an older man who looked like a grandfather. And he did the full examination on me. And it was the first time I had ever had that done. And he left the room and I went into this little dressing room that they had to change. And I was literally shaking and I threw up. I mean, I felt it was such a violating feeling.
Yeah.
Because he was like a grandpa. And I was like, no, I had never been in that circumstance before. I didn't know what was like normal, what was not normal. It is very intrusive. I mean, gynecological exams are very intrusive.
No, and you have to, even if it's a male, there has to be some feeling of trust and like a bond, like not like a bond, but it's a very invasive.
This was a little grandpa
who walked in
30 seconds before and then had his arm up to the elbow inside me. It was a very traumatizing experience.
That's literally the worst form of things I can think of. That's crazy. That is crazy.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously it was so traumatizing. I was like physically ill from the trauma. It was horrible. So I wanted to make sure that I got that experience out of the way for the girls. So with a very kind female doctor, so that they didn't have the same kind of, I know it's awful. Yeah. Oh, that's so bad. We're going to do an article this month where we talk about why it's very common actually for women to avoid the gynecologist's office and not get their annual exams because of trauma associated with it, or a lot of doctors are not trauma informed and women have had experiences that make them extra sensitive to that. So we're going to talk about that in an article later this month because I've lost a lot of family members to female cancers. That yearly exam is so important to catch things early. So skipping it because it's embarrassing, skipping it because it's uncomfortable is definitely something we want to kind of get everyone past. But the doctors, need to do their work on their end too, because a lot of it is about trauma. A lot of it is about, pain. A lot of it, there's a lot going on there. So we're going to unpack that later this month. I think that's a really interesting topic.
Absolutely.
But yeah, let's dive into these myths. So the first one is that all menstrual cycles are 28 days. I believed this completely because I always thought I was weird because mine was never exactly 28 days. My periods were always very irregular, but I read this maybe somewhere or learned it in school. I don't know where this came from, but I truly believe that yes, the menstrual cycle is 28 days. I mean, I feel like that's generally considered to be fact. Maybe.
Yeah, no, I feel like that's fact. And if it's off, then you get, if you're, I remember a good friend of mine was prescribed birth control early because it regulated her period,
Mhm.
and so I feel like if it's not, then you tell your doctor and then you get prescribed something to fix it or something like that. And I've never been one to do that. Mine has always been somewhat irregular. It seems more regular when my life isn't stressful, and like things aren't crazy, and my caffeine I have so much going on, from caffeine intake to stress levels to nutrition. And that's the thing, and there's so much that goes and factors into it that there has been months where I was not pregnant that I have skipped my period, or it came early, or there's so many things that go into it, that just to say something so black and white like it's 28 days,
Yeah, I always
insane.
I always felt like that I was abnormal because of that fact. And I had always heard that if you are skipping periods or something, it means that something's wrong with you. Like you are underweight, or you are
absolutely
malnourished, or you're exercising too much. I don't know.
That's what I heard. I was super, super athletic as a kid. And there were months where I skipped my period because I was doing a crazy amount of soccer, and I was thin, not thin, but I'm petite. And so I was told by my doctor like a lot, like, oh, well, this is why. And like, like, well, what do I do? Gymnasts will straight up skip their periods
for years.
Okay. Like, please.
Well, and I think unless you've gone through trying to get pregnant or an infertility struggle, you may not be as educated as other people on this, because I think that's when most women really dive into the education part of our menstrual cycles and our
they
fertility.
Get apps. They cycle.
Right. They're tracking it on
like
their phones.
Crazy.
Yeah.
But it only starts when there's a purpose,
Right. And the truth is only 13% of women have that 28-day cycle.
So, hey, that's like a superpower, if anything. So let's just rule that out as ridiculous, like let your body do its thing. But if you notice that, like I mentioned some things, caffeine intake, stress, what you eat, or those things are important. And if you notice that something's off, then it's okay to check in on yourself and be like, it's okay to shoot for the 28 days. I'm not trying to say like, oh, just let it be as it is. Sometimes maybe there might be a lifestyle change that you can switch that might be better for your body so that it's more regulated. I notice that when I watch my stress levels, my cycle is a bit more regulatory than, either.
Well, yeah. And I think if you have always had pretty regular periods and they suddenly stop, or there's a big change for you like that, that could be an indication that there's something going on there. That could be polycystic ovary syndrome. It could be a thyroid issue. So that definitely, kind of constitutes a doctor visit to make sure that everything's okay. But if you've always been irregular, don't feel like, this is something that you should be on a 28-day cycle. Not necessarily. Everybody's body is different. And as we get older and we have children, or we go on birth control, or it messes with our regular cycle system anyway. It can. I mean, there are, other than the pill where you have that little 28-day pack or whatever, a lot of birth controls nowadays, whether it's an implant or a patch or any, can very much disrupt our cycles and have us stop having periods completely, which is fine. That's another myth that is not on our list today, but I want to make sure I point this out because this was really life-changing for me to hear from my doctor. And I didn't hear it until I was in my late 20s, is that there's nothing that scientifically says that you need to have a period every month. There's nothing, there's not a need for it necessarily. So if you're on a birth control that makes you stop having your period, or you are very athletic and you stop having your period or something like that, that's not dangerous. You don't have to have a period every month. So that was really a big deal for me to hear that, because it made me kind of accept other birth control options that before I was like, oh, that must, be bad for you because you stopped getting your period on it. No, I don't know why I thought that, but that's not true.
I don't know why I thought that too, but I also, have that underlining impression of like, oh, not having your period for that long can't be good. It's almost like having your eyelash extensions on or your nails on too long can't be good. It's like, I don't know, anything for too long, we just naturally feel like, oh, that's bad, because it's not natural in our minds. It's not how we were born. But at the same time, it's good to know that it's not going to affect you in a negative way. You don't have to have it because
Yeah, I went
just
through
assume.
I went through a period of time where I was having super heavy periods and I was having lots of complications with it. And my doctor at the time put me on birth control pills, where I would skip the week that would normally give me my period and I would start the next pack right away. So I would not have a period. And it was a man at the time. He said, you can do this for most of the year. If you have one period a year, that's all just to make sure. He said, just so that we know that you do have a period and that there's nothing strange happening while it's going on. So we can kind of test out your symptoms or whatever, but you don't need to have a period. And I was like, wow. Okay. I'm signing up for this. This is amazing. And I mean, now I have an IUD. I don't have a period at all anymore, but because of the IUD, but
most of the reason I enjoyed being pregnant and breastfeeding was because I didn't have to have a period. It's the best. It's the best. I highly recommend to breastfeed as long as possible, if possible, because that keeps it away too.
Yeah.
Amazing. And then you get it back and Anyway.
Okay. So the next myth is that periods are supposed to be painful and heavy. This is another one that I didn't necessarily believe they were supposed to be heavy. I always did have heavy periods and I always thought that was a little unusual, but I always thought they were supposed to be painful. I always thought it was weird that I didn't have cramping and I didn't have any of that because I would hear people talking about cramps. Oh, some of the girls in school would be like, oh, I have such bad cramps. And they would need to take medication and they would need to sit out PE and they'd stay home from school. And, I'd call my friend and say, oh, you didn't come to school. Are you okay? She'd be like, oh, I just have such bad cramps. And I've never had cramps. So I honestly don't even know, other than labor, I honestly don't know what they feel like.
They're very mild. Do you remember that on the drive to the hospital, mild, like labor pains? That's what they are. To me, that's what they are. But they also change too. Mine were like kind of not so great in high school when I first got it. And then they mellowed out. And then after having Kenzie, they came back to be harder. I don't know. The body's weird.
The body's weird. I mean, both of my girls have had issues with really, painful cramps. That to the point where sometimes it's debilitating. And, we saw the doctor and got that kind of remedied because nobody should be that uncomfortable every month. It could be a symptom of other stuff, or there could be ways to manage it that you haven't considered yet. So just don't think, oh, of course, I'm staying in bed the whole day because I have cramps. That's normal. Not necessarily. It doesn't need to be. So that's definitely a myth. I think there's kind of a lot of people. One part of periods that people are comfortable talking about is the cramps or PMS, those kinds of things. But it's a wide range. It could be a huge, there's people who have extreme symptoms of PMS, and then there are people who never have it at all. And so anywhere in that spectrum, I would say is considered normal.
Yeah. I get a little like emotional. Like the commercials get me a little harder. And like, I notice that I crave certain foods. So like my body kind of gives me signs that it's coming.
Yeah.
And when I was like in my 20s, for some reason, because it was more talked about the PMS stuff, like I would almost use it as like an excuse to be a total, it's like, I'm a PMS, and like, no, that's not like a get out of jail free card to be a jerk to everybody around you.
Yeah. And that's actually
a total thing. We're just a little emotional and unstable for a little
bit. Actually the next myth is that PMS is not like in our heads. It is if you've ever had a child, you will know that during pregnancy and directly after pregnancy, the surges in hormones creates, for me at least, and a lot of people I know, created so much emotional kind of fluctuations that it's undeniable that hormones affect emotional balance. And I did realize after noticing it so much during pregnancy and right after pregnancy that I was either more emotional or more agitated or calmer, or there were fluctuations, right? Then I began to notice that, maybe I didn't get cramping, but the week or so before my period, I would be way more easily irritated and on it. Things that normally would not bother me would really bother me. And I was more likely to argue with my partner or other people in my life that week. I'm not an
Do
argumentative
they
person.
make a joke about it when it's
No.
finally the thing? That's the thing. Dan will kind of lightheartedly, and it doesn't bother me. He'll just kind of lightheartedly, like when he knows, because I'm open about it. When he knows that that's what's happening, he's like, "Oh, last Tuesday makes more sense now to me now." It's like something like that.
Well, what I
It's like,
noticed,
maybe you're right.
what I noticed is that when my hormone levels fall, even though I'm not actively getting my period because of my IUD, I still have the hormone fluctuations. So when my hormone levels start to fall at that week of the month, and your progesterone, that's how you say that, right?
Progesterone,
and, and estrogen fall the week before your period, and that the falling hormones directly impact your serotonin levels. But what I noticed was I would usually have a pretty bad headache that week. I get headaches fairly easily. I'm affected by like barometric pressure, and I'm affected by my hormone fluctuations. So I would know that's what it is because it's a very specific feeling headache. And then I started to correlate that the week of that headache, I would also be very agitated with the people around me. And so I kind of made that connection on my own. Nobody was like, oh, hey, look at the calendar, she's angry again. But I think it's probably the combination of I have a headache and that's making me feel bad. And also this is the 1 week of the month where you are very irritating to me. It wasn't me. It was them being irritated.
I mean, there should be like a small little like coping group for the guys that have to deal with this the week before. Cause I mean, it is kind of a bummer that yes, it is out of our control, but also like you are the direct, you're going to get all the heat that week because we're just out of.
But if you feel like your emotional fluctuations that week are much more than average, you definitely should talk to your doctor about it. There are women who have such a drop in hormones and affects their serotonin where you can have suicidal thoughts.
Wow.
You can have really, rages. So if that's the case, definitely talk to your doctor because there are ways to stabilize that a little bit with medication that you may want to consider because that is really scary to me. I mean, it's the same hormones that can cause like postpartum psychosis, postpartum depression. It's the same hormones in our body. It's not as big of a fluctuation, obviously. After we have a child, there is a huge fluctuation of hormone levels that can cause a lot of distress. And that's very serious. And I think everyone understands that that's a very serious, very real phenomenon. We may not give ourselves the same kind of grace. The fact that we have a mini version of that every month.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. Because then we almost like, there are the lighthearted jokes that are made, through media or through other things and outlets that almost make it feel like, silly to feel that way when it's like, we all were like, we just wish they had some idea of what it feels like. Because really, it doesn't feel quite like in our control. Even when I'm in my 30s and I'm aware of what my triggers are and what's going on, and I try and check myself, it doesn't always feel like that's like the most solid plan because I'm human.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I try to remind myself that when I do make the correlation, I try to remind myself that, this is not about this person. They're actually not doing anything abnormal. It's you.
Yeah. I try and remind myself that I'm a little extra sensitive to things this week and to maybe not like lash out irrationally. But it doesn't always work. And, that's also, I feel like why I'm transparent about when I'm on my cycle with my husband. Cause I just don't want him to think that out of nowhere, this person's just raging over the fork in the sink for my God, woman. Like we've been going on for 20 minutes about this. And then and then I have to come and be like, yeah, like I overdid it on that.
You're like, this week of the month, I just don't like you.
The fork. Yeah, no, it gets real messy, but that's a relationship, and
ups and downs, baby.
And when you're a kid and you deal with those hormonal imbalance, like then they totally are like, oh, maybe it's real,
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. So myth number 4, you cannot get pregnant on your period. That is not true. It's not as likely, obviously, but if you do have a shorter menstrual cycle, you can ovulate really early in your cycle. So you can ovulate and as early as like day 7 of your cycle, and you absolutely can get pregnant. Especially since, to be, very blunt about it, sperm can stay in our bodies for 5 days. So yeah, you absolutely can get pregnant on your period. So don't think that that is an effective form of birth control, ladies. It is not. So as someone who can, I think I could, use the same soap as some person and get pregnant. I'm super fertile. I think I could pass, my husband too closely in the hallway and probably.
Are you like a Jane the Virgin situation?
Oh my God.
Did you ever watch that show?
It took me, I'm not kidding you. It took me 2 kids before I realized that regular hormonal birth control does not work for me.
Wow.
Yeah. Because I had my first child very young. And my doctors at the time told me I had been on the pill. And then my doctors at the time told me, oh, you're young. You probably didn't take it regularly. You probably skipped some, or you didn't take it at the same time every day. That I was being, I was just an irresponsible young person. And
you're like the goddess of fertility.
I was like, I actually totally did, but okay.
You're like, let's blame this on that. Okay.
Well, and you're trying to think back months and be like, was there one day where
is this gaslighting going on right now?
Right.
Like,
yeah. And then I was like, okay, I'm definitely going to do better. And then 9 months later, pregnant again. And I was like,
are these packs I'm taking? What is this bull?
Wait, what? Yeah. That's and then, crazy. So they were like, okay, oh, wow. The pill does not work for you. No problem.
Stay away from all men.
Yeah. And then they're like, we'll try the Depo-Provera shot. That will work. That's very, very effective. And they still said underlying implication that way you can't fuck it up, you stupid girl, because we're going to administer it to you. You very dumb girl.
In you can't fail this method.
Right. Oh, obviously you're not taking the pill that we're giving you. So we're going to inject it directly into your butt. Well, I gained 40 pounds on the Depo-Provera pill and still got pregnant. So there you go. That was really, I was like, wait. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'm gaining all this weight no matter what I do. I mean, I was working out like crazy. I was eating like salad, nothing else. And I would still gain weight every month, but I was like, at least I'm not getting pregnant. So maybe it's a trade-off. And then I got pregnant anyway. Yeah, we're off topic now, but I just want to say,
it happens at least every other podcast episode. I would say on average, I'm like, how has someone not come to you and seriously written like a really great Showtime, like television show about your life? Are you serious? This is ridiculous. That's crazy.
Yeah, it wasn't. I mean, I literally had 4 kids before I finally found a really good doctor, and they told me hormonal birth control for whatever reason is not effective for you. And after my 4th child, I had a copper IUD placed.
Did you look back at them and go, you think they think it's not working for me? Like, how many more kids do I got to pop out for you to go, maybe this isn't the method for you? Like,
exactly.
What the hell is going on?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm with my 4th child, like there had been 4 years between my 3rd and my 4th. And so the doctors were like, oh, we got it figured out. And I was like, no, like we're actually separating. So we're just not getting along. This is not about the effective birth control.
No, don't chalk this up to you guys. This was a personal choice.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So after my 4th child, they figured out the hormonal birth control does not work for me.
How rare is that? How often does that? That's scary. That's scary. That's so scary. Wait, are you saying it took 4 children for them to realize that it was not working?
Well, and I think if I had been in my 30s, they would have listened to me, but because I was still effectively like a teenager, young adult, they were like, oh, you're irresponsible. You're not taking it on time. They didn't openly say after my 1st child, they did say that, but they did not like continue to tell me that. They just shifted me to like the shot. And
is there an effective form of birth control for your situation?
Yes.
You can't be alone in this. Like,
no, after my 4th child, a doctor finally suggested that I get a copper IUD placed. Copper IUDs are non-hormonal. They also I was having problems with my blood pressure, hormonal birth control. My sister and I have the same issue. It really affects our blood pressure. It makes it very high. And so they offered me to, my sister stayed on hormonal birth control and took a blood pressure medication, which, I mean, she also has 2 kids. I don't know if that would work for her, but
she also has children. So
yeah. But I had a copper IUD placed because it's non-hormonal. And so my blood pressure came back down to normal, and copper IUDs create an environment in your uterus, which makes it really unlikely for pregnancy to happen, because it's like the copper metal makes your uterus like not a comfortable place for babies to implant. I don't know how it works. I'm not a scientist.
It's just not like a hospitable environment.
Exactly.
For the situation.
I am a scientist. It worked. It worked for me. Oh my God. I'm so happy. And you only need to have a copper IUD placed every 10 to 12 years, which was super fantastic.
Cool. That's super cool.
Yeah. If you're uncomfortable with hormonal birth control, there's a lot of reasons why it can affect your blood pressure. It can affect your mood. A lot of women have depression on hormonal birth control. It can, there are some question marks about how it affects our cancer risk. So if you are high risk for female cancers, you may want to look into other options. But anyway, that's my talk about non-hormonal birth control.
That's so interesting though. Cause you get like someone who, let's just, for example, say someone who doesn't have an older sister, doesn't have a mom figure, just goes and gets birth control and doesn't know, and then they get pregnant, and they have your similar situation. Like, I didn't even know that was a thing. That's crazy.
Yeah, but doctors didn't believe me until I got pregnant on Depo-Provera, because it is supposed to be like 98 or 99%.
They injected you. They were like, no more of this nonsense with this lady. We're never going to see her again. And then you come back with a kid. And you're like, hey, also gonna need a weight loss specialist. Thanks to you.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Like, that's the worst form of trade-off. Kid and weight gain. And I would have sued. I would have been. So.
My sister-in-law, who is not related to me by blood at all, had a very similar situation. She ended up getting pregnant 4 times while on birth control, and finally, her doctors decided, she lost a baby. She had a stillbirth, and then she had 2 children, and she was like a boy and a girl. And she was like, I am so done. Like, and the doctor said, well, you know what? We can't quite figure it out, but just maybe get your tubes tied. So she agreed, and she was very young. She was, I want to say, early 20s, maybe mid-20s at the most.
Wow.
Yeah. But she was like, okay, I've got my 2 kids. So she went in to have her tubes tied, and the doctors at her tube tie appointment said, I'm sorry, ma'am, you're pregnant. We can't tie your tubes. And she was like, the fuck? So she had her 3rd child. This is the sister-in-law I was telling you about that I just lost in December. She passed away from cancer, but she had her 4th child.
Tie your tubes, you're pregnant.
Yeah, because right before they take you in, they do a final pregnancy test, and hers was positive, and she was like, God damn it. So but her youngest is an absolute joy. I love Danielle so much. So she had 4 kids before they figured it out. And then literally she had her youngest child and immediately got her tubes tied. I think they did it.
Like there.
No, I think they did it.
In there.
Honestly, I think they did it in the hospital.
No more of this nonsense. She's like, I'm going to breathe it and get pregnant. I don't want it. I'm going to eat a salad and get pregnant. Just tie it while you're there. I don't want any more nonsense. That's crazy, because you hear more often, and it's spoken more often, and thank goodness, because I struggled with it, fertility issues and struggling with getting pregnant. But there's a whole other side of people like sneezing and getting pregnant.
Yeah, the fertility issues on the opposite side are also
using birth control, trusting the system, and then getting pregnant and not knowing that it's the system. That's nuts.
It's also a huge struggle. I struggled in the opposite way, right? I mean, I love all of my children I don't know what I would do without any of them, but it was definitely something that took some adapting, because I did not mean to have children so close together and so back to.
But I mean, that could almost be like a flex though, because then you can go and like have babies for people and make a lot of money. Do you know what I mean? Like if you're super fertile, like there's a market for that. You know what I mean? Like it's like if you produce too much breast milk, there's a market for that. People will
Oh my
buy your
gosh,
breast milk. Like, it's we're so off topic. I'm
When
just
I
saying,
was
like, use it as a flex, guys.
when I was that age as a young mother and really struggling financially, if anyone had ever mentioned to me that I could be a surrogate or I could donate eggs or carry a child for someone else, and not that I'm trying to profit off it, but it would have made my life easier at that time.
And oh my
I
gosh,
was
the
gonna
trade-off
be
is
pregnant
incredible.
anyway. I was gonna be pregnant anyway every other year.
I have a friend that does it, and I'm sorry, she does egg donations, and the process is not like quick, and it's not like easy, but it's very rewarding,
Yeah.
and it's a very great financial gain for the person donating, but at the same time, the gain on the other side is indescribable. We know what that is, parents. So
yeah, because I had really easy pregnancies with very little complications and very easy deliveries. So if someone had ever told me, I didn't even know surrogacy was a thing at that age. Like, I mean, I knew it was a thing, but I didn't know anyone would ever done it. No celebrities were talking about it. Like, I didn't know. That would have been something that would have been really life-changing for me because I was going to be pregnant anyway.
Like, if I'm going to do this, might as well make money, not get money sucked from my.
Well, and just, I was already financially struggling with the kids that I had. So being able to help another family and that would have prevented pregnancy for me pretty effectively for those 9 months. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's a good solid like fact, right? If
right.
you're pregnant, you
cannot get pregnant
you
twice.
Can't get like a hump on the hump. There's no pregnant on pregnant on pregnant on pregnant.
Right.
You're just pregnant. Oh
exactly.
man, it's weird.
Okay, the next myth is that perimenopause, which is pre-menopause or the transition into menopause, only lasts a few months. I knew that was not true. That is absolutely not true. And I know that is not true because I know, like my sister mentioned, she's been dealing with it for years. So pre-menopause, perimenopause, however you want to term it, generally starts in your mid-40s. Your estrogen levels decrease, your periods become irregular and eventually stop altogether. And it just basically means that your ovaries are no longer ovulating on a regular basis. Not to mention, I mean, you can still get pregnant. You are still ovulating usually, just not as regularly. So that can go on for years. That's not a fast thing. The symptoms that correspond with it can change and adjust as the time goes by. But from what I've heard, it could be a solid 5 to 10 years that you experience perimenopause symptoms.
That's a very long time.
It's a very long time.
Yeah, let's just rule that. I'm glad we're working this through because, a little bit to like years is a very big time difference.
Yeah, and how we talked about earlier about how when your estrogen and progesterone levels drop, you do have those mood changes that we associate with like PMS. That happens for several years. And so mood swings are one of the, symptoms of perimenopause. So if you can kind of recognize that in yourself earlier and figure out ways to cope with it, figure out ways to kind of be more aware, right? Emotions are something that we can choose or choose not to respond to. So that's something to really kind of keep in mind as you enter this phase of your life. There's also like changes in libido, night sweats. There can be, vaginal dryness. There can be all different kinds of symptoms. So definitely talk to your doctor if they haven't already spoken to you about that, because some women can start premenopause as early as mid-30s. So you definitely, if you have female family members, a mom, aunts, grandma, whatever, to ask like around what age did that happen for you? It's a better indicator of when you might be, able to expect that. But something to talk to your doctor about, definitely. They can usually, during a physical exam, they can usually tell if you're in premenopause. Hopefully they'd share that with you and don't just assume you know that, because it will help you. And also, there are obviously a lot of options for things like hormone replacement, changes in diet. A lot of women experience weight gain during this period of their life, and especially like around the midsection, which can be dangerous for coronary heart health. And just other issues. You may want to talk to your doctor about that, because there are a lot of options that are, kind of new and that weren't available to our moms and grandmas. So we definitely want to hear about that. Yeah, so that's important. And like, that's the next myth, right? Hormone therapy is not the only way to treat symptoms of menopause or premenopause. There are a lot of different ways now. A lot of women are having really effective treatment just by dietary changes and supplements.
Mhm.
But for many, many years, the go-to was hormone replacement therapy. And I think that was probably more common at certain times in history, because like I know my mom's age group, which are now in their mid 70s, it was very common to get hysterectomies because that was a kind of an easy solution to female issues. So if you came into the doctor and had already had your children and you were complaining about things like heavy periods, you had cysts, or you had any issue like that, the kind of go-to was hysterectomy, which I don't think is the case anymore. I think that's pretty much reserved for like female cancers at this point, because it's a pretty extreme surgery.
It is. It is. It's like it's almost like two on the other side. So that we've explored other, less invasive options.
Right, absolutely. Now, I mean, obviously, if you have a full hysterectomy, like my mom went through hysterectomy in her late 20s because she had a female cancer. But that is unusual. If that happens, obviously, hormone replacement therapy is something that is going to be important for you, because at that young age, your body is not expecting to go through menopause. But there now, I mean, people are supplementing with vitamins, changing diet, increasing their water intake, starting exercise routines. You lose bone density during this period of your life too. So this is a great time if you have never done strength training exercises to start that. That's very important for bone health, preventing osteoporosis, right? Am I saying that right?
Osteoporosis. Yeah.
Osteoporosis. There you go.
Mhm.
Yeah, but most doctors recommend strength training for women in this period of your life, which is interesting because you don't think about like the Golden Girls are out there lifting weights.
I see them. I'm in the gym every day, and I'm at that 10 a.m. crowd, and that's when they're there because they don't want to deal with all the people that look like me at 6 p.m. And I think it's great because they're strength training. And I think as individuals and as women, maybe it's not a gender thing. We get a little bit of I keep saying the word flex, feeling like we have some control in it, like just simply changing what we eat and how we live our daily lives slightly. It's not going to fix everything, but it certainly helps towards the main goal, right?
Right.
And so simply just saying, oh, well, you're too old to be at the gym, or you're too old to be lifting those weights, or it's going to hurt you. It's like that stigma has caused that issue to happen, which is why they're not lifting weights or working on keeping strong. They should be, and we shouldn't be just, like discouraging that, or
No, I think it's great. I love to see it. And I think, you know, the exercise routines, when I think of strength training, I've always thought until recently, strength training, not for me. Like I bulk up really easily. I don't want to look like that. And that's very vain, first of all. And second of all, not what it's about at all. I mean, you know that better than anybody. Like strength training is something, not only is it so good for you mentally, because that feeling of like accomplishment and strength and reaching goals is really important for our mental health, but also things like heart health, things like bone health, things like overall metabolism. I mean, there are so many benefits that you hear that no matter, I know when I was growing up and for many, many years as a young adult, it was all about cardio. Everybody was doing Zumba and step class and jazzercise and like running and jogging, and everybody was cardio, cardio, cardio. And what we've learned as time has gone on is that strength training is as important or more important than cardio. And it's something that I was never encouraged to do as a girl. Like that was never even kind of something that anybody ever did that I knew, any woman that did that I knew. But as I'm getting older, I'm realizing how much more important it is. And so, yeah, that is definitely something that we're building a new gym at the house. And I've made a point to have the strength training equipment in there because before I was just, I was happy doing my yoga and Pilates. But as I'm getting older, I'm in my mid 40s now. As I'm getting older, I'm realizing that I'm missing like such an important piece of my routine.
I agree, amen to all of what you said. I also find it completely awesome that the things I used to have to ask my husband to help me with, I can do on my own now. I can lift things, I can move things. And it's that feeling of independence that really, really drives me. And I can totally see how that would be a good feeling as a senior citizen, to not rely on someone stronger, younger to help you lift things, move things. I mean, simply bending down and picking something off the floor can really debilitate you at a certain age. So if you kept those areas of your life strong and intact, then not only are you keeping yourself healthy for longer, but you're also helping your loved ones not worry about you because they know that you can handle yourself. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
There's some
See,
strong 80-something-year-olds out there that
no,
can
yeah.
handle themselves, you know?
That's the thing. I've always been physically strong. And so it's never been something that I really thought about. I took it for granted completely. I've always been able to, pick up things heavier than my sons can pick up. And I've never really thought twice about it. But now that I'm looking kind of towards the horizon of, being retirement age, being the age where I need to worry about things like bone loss and muscle loss, because that's another thing. As you age, you lose 5 to 10% of your muscle mass naturally.
Yeah.
I've always exercised. When I did have an exercise routine, it was always more about making my body look the way that I wanted it to look. But as I'm getting older, my goals have completely shifted. So now I'm super into yoga because I want to keep my joints lubricated. I see my husband suffer with arthritis, and I saw my grandmother deal with joint issues, have joints replaced. She had both of her knees replaced, shoulders replaced, and it was a very invasive surgery. So I'm proactively doing things to avoid that. And then now I'm also adding in strength training because I'm seeing, that fragility of women as they get older and the serious fear of things like breaking a hip. Because most people, when they get to be a certain age, if they have a fall and they do something, they have a big injury like a broken hip, it's very hard to recover from. That can be a slippery slope.
That's how my grandpa went. It was like,
Yeah.
he broke. And then and that's what everybody told him. And it's like almost like a small little death sentence, which is sad because he was a fire chief,
It's so sad.
And he played on a minor league baseball. Like he was a major athletic macho look dude. You would not think that. And also it's so sad as the person to know that that's what brought you down, because, and there could have been stuff that he could have maybe done to keep no, he was at the gym. Like he was that dude. He was actually that dude. And sometimes, life is life, but there are things you can eat. There are things you can do. There are things you can do every day, small steps to really overall improve your health. And it has nothing to do with the vanity aspect of it.
Right. I take a lot of supplements and medications specifically for anti-aging and overall health. And I'm looking, my husband is 20 plus years older than me. So he's in his late 60s. And because of his social circle, I'm around a lot of people who are late 60s to early 80s. That's kind of his group of friends. They're all within, most of them are a little older than him, not exactly his age. So I see how the home we're in right now has a lot of steps. I see how carefully they navigate the steps, and it's important to do that, obviously. But I just foresee that feeling fragile, feeling vulnerable in that way is just something I want to stave off as long as I can. I want to do everything I can do to be active for as long as I can be. I'm much more careful with my diet now than I've ever been in my life. I'm much more conscious of my overall health than I ever have been. And that's as you see people close to you getting sick or having health issues, you want to do everything you can to be as active as you can for as long as you can, because so many people that I know and that I care for deeply can't do the things that really bring them joy anymore. And they can't do the things that they always took, for granted. Oh, when I get to that age, I'm going to play golf every day. I'm going to, buy a sailboat. And then sometimes when they get to the age where they can financially comfortably do that or have the time to do it, they physically can't do it anymore. Exactly. And I want to be able to chase my grandkids at the park. I want to be able to, take them on trips. I want to be able to run around with my dog. I just want to be able to do those things for as long as I possibly can. So I'm taking responsibility for my choices today to make that happen. But, when we're talking about hormone replacement therapy, that is a wonderful option for a lot of women. And I have not had to deal with that yet or come to that kind of decision about whether that's right for me. That's something I'll talk to my doctor about when it gets to that point. Hormone replacement therapy can help a lot with bone loss, and it can relieve a lot of the symptoms of menopause. It does come with risks. There's an increased risk of heart disease, of stroke, blood clots, breast cancer. There's a lot of risks. And from someone who has a very high cancer risk already, that's something I'm really going to have to talk to my doctor about and make that an informed decision about. So just don't think that's the only option that you have. You have a lot of options now, and educate yourself. Go talk to a specialist. A lot of gynecologists now, like mine, are menopause specialists. Go talk to someone like that. And, or, a lot of them have blogs and stuff too. You can read, make sure it's an actual like medical professional. Don't take my advice, take the advice of a medical professional. And so the next and the last myth is that menopause for women is basically their expiration date. We have talked about this a lot. I think we just recently talked about how, the Golden Girls, everyone knows that show. Those women were supposed to be in their early to mid 50s.
No way. Huh? What?
Yeah. If you look up the ages, and they mentioned their age on the show a few times, they're like 53, 55, except for Sophia, the mom.
Yeah. No.
She's obviously like 20 years old. She's supposed to be in her 70s, but like literally now I have to give props to the show Golden Girls, because like the character of Blanche, they had her still being really sexually active and sexy and all of that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
But they also, like, if you compare, any of those characters to like Jennifer Aniston or J-Lo, who is also in their 50s now.
Oh my God.
Holy shit.
Oh my gosh. There has to be a picture of those two women next to each other. I mean, yeah, she's like, we're all not J-Lo. Please don't put J-Lo as the poster top 50, but she takes very good care of herself.
Right. Let's use
money
this
and access, but she takes good care of herself.
Yeah, she does. Let's use this as a barometer, because, my partner and I are in the multifamily industry and some of our other businesses, apartment complexes and senior complexes and things like that. Senior living facilities, whether it's a nursing home or a apartment complex, the age requirement is 55. 55.
Almost there. I'm always looking at those places and going, yes, take me now.
I tell my kids all the time, I want to live in one of those. It's like a sorority house for old people.
So fun. And you're telling me I only have to be 55?
I want to play balloon volleyball and have ice cream sundae. So yes, I do. Thank you.
And I'm moving in where I'm still really there to where you can't, there's no messing around with me. I'm going to be fully there. Fun. Yeah.
They clean your room for you. They cook for you. They will wash your hair for you. Yes. Sign me up. I'm all about it.
And it's like soft foods are like my favorite kinds of foods.
It's like simple food and
not overly seasoned. No. We're so off topic, but this is crazy, because I guess if that's what senior citizen is, 55?
55 is when you qualify for senior living facilities, or senior discounts, things like that.
Okay. I mean, like movie tickets and stuff like that. It's 55.
Right. And retirement age now is anywhere between 62 and 67 average.
55 is too young to be considered a senior citizen.
Yes, absolutely.
Even for the discounts.
I'll take a discount if someone wants to give it to me, but
give me a discount for being like the pretty mom in the group. Don't give me a discount for being a senior citizen at 55. That feels so young.
I'm 45.
5 years.
I'm 45, and when I get called like ma'am, I'm like, oh. So I'm only 10 years away. 55. I'm only 10 years away, but no, I'm not moving in when I'm 55, because I know me and I'm so nice and I would help all my neighbors. And next thing you know, I would be like the young whippersnapper that's like pushing everyone around the park and like cooking for the whole community. And like, no, I don't have energy. It's too much responsibility.
I know where this path leads, and it's too much work for me.
Too much responsibility. But no, so many women, and I call once my kids left the home, I'm calling this kind of like my second act, because I suddenly have free time. I suddenly have more disposable income. I suddenly have the ability to travel without worrying about a school schedule.
Absolutely.
And I'm taking full advantage of it.
You got to also factor in, and we got to normalize factoring in the whole preparation. You know how you prep for Cancun 6 months before your body? You got to prep for retirement like in your 30s. Because my dad is a very good example. He had all these dreams of where he wanted to go and what he wanted to do. And now his body is keeping him from doing a lot of that. And it's like, you can't just simply financially prepare for it or like mentally prepare for it, or make a vision board. You got to like take care of your body. So when you want to go travel the world, you can travel the world,
That's one thing my partner tells me almost on a daily basis. He's 68 this year, tells me on a daily basis, why did I wait so long? Why did I wait so long? I should have done these things 10 years earlier, 15 years earlier. Why? And now that I, can enjoy it, I'm not as able to enjoy it. So I've learned from seeing that. And my grandmother, she kept herself really active and as healthy as possible for a long time. And she lived such a full and rich life until 90. I mean, she was volunteering, she was working, she was involved in the community, she was walking every day, she had an acre of garden. I mean, this woman was such a kind of goal for me, as far as she was super involved, not only in my life and the life of I'm her grandchild, right? So not only in her grandchild's lives, like raising them, but in her great grandchildren's lives, raising them.
Yep.
And she was fully capable and present to take care of my kids.
Yep.
When they were little, like pulling a wagon, running after them at the park, pushing them on the swings. I mean, and she kept that level of activity and engagement with them until she was 90 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So that is my goal. And I'm making sure that I don't just
such the crazy high goal, by the way, because I have met her and I know exactly what you're talking about. And that is well,
okay. My sister and I made it easier for her by having our kids young, but my boys at least are 27 and 25 and have absolutely no interest yet in having kids or even settling down. So I'm not going to be this super young grandmother, at least for them. Thankfully, Sam wants to have kids soon. So I do want to make sure that I'm able to be there for my grandkids and hopefully like her, my great grandkids, because that would be amazing. Yeah. But I want to be able to do it in a way where I'm not, suffering from so much. And that requires, like you said, planning. Like I'm doing things now. I'm way more engaged with my health today than I've ever been. And I'm starting that hopefully in advance of any, I don't have any medical problems right now. So I'm trying to do preventative stuff now so that I can transition.
I have a good advantage because I think it's more talked about now, more thought about now, and we're more aware of it now. Like the thought that we're talking about. So now we can, like when my parents were, in their 40s and like they were spending the weekends working on the backyard and fixing this and doing that and going to Home Depot and like doing the normal things. But I never remember, and they had a 24-hour fitness membership. I remember going to the gym as a kid, kids club, but it's like, were they just doing like the machine? Like there was no education behind
it.
No preventative education.
I want to point out that like I'm super privileged to be able to even think about this. I don't have to get up in the morning and go to a 8 to 5 or 9 to 5. And I have help at home where I don't have to like spend my weekends running errands. So I want to point out that the routine that I'm on and the things that I'm able to do for my health are not necessarily within the grasp of everyone. And so trust that I recognize that privilege and I'm very thankful for it. I know it's not everybody's experience. A lot of people are caring for elderly parents and still have kids at home and have demanding jobs and don't have access to all of the, resources that I do. So I don't want to make that sound like it's really easy. It isn't. It's probably easier for me than anyone. And I still have to work at it. So I can't imagine trying to balance financial concerns and aging parents and work life. And I get that this is not something.
It's also been proven though, that like eating out consistently versus buying whole nutritious food options is actually cheaper. It's just people's like, I don't have time. Like there's always reasons, right?
Right.
But if you make small what's in your abilities to do, and what that is better than nothing, right?
Yeah, and one of the things that I'm really focusing on this year, and I think is within the reach of anybody, because it has absolutely nothing to do with resources or time even, is that I've kind of created a vision of myself, which I think would be my best self, and it's who I want to be. And there's a lot of aspects to that. Some of it is health, some of it is mental, some of it is things I want to accomplish, or ways that I want to react to other people. And then I'm working on bad habits and things like that. But I have a vision of myself that I think would be my best self. And I'm making sure that I do something every day that gets me closer to that. And that could be as easily as a minute of meditation, or of listening to like self-help, or reading a book, or, I listen to like these motivational mantra things on Spotify, like whatever it is, I'm doing something every day where I can say, okay, today I got this much closer to my goal by doing this. I take an action step, and it doesn't have to necessarily cost anything or take a lot of time. So if this is something that you're concerned about, and you're thinking about your long-term health, and you're thinking about your female reproductive health and all of that, I would really encourage you to just kind of have a vision in your head of what your ideal self would be, what your best self would be, and try to take a step every day towards that. Even if it's just going for a 10-minute walk, honestly, it can be that easy on your lunch break or in the evening or whatever. Little things, they really add up in the end. And just having the mindset that you got closer to your goal is, for me, super motivating to stay on track.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So yeah, we talked about a lot of different things today. I don't feel like we just stuck to the subject today.
We dove into a lot, but it's very universally like important subject to dive into, because there were a few that I heard that were told to me that I thought was just a thing, that, we just need to like not just take things so black and white, and look into it and just be questioning things. It's okay to question your body, and to, be open with your doctor. And, we covered some really important topics today that I think got at least our wheels turning as women, or beings that have
menstruate. Yeah.
Yes. Women or beings that menstruate. So yes.
Yes. So yeah, hopefully, somebody heard something today that's new for them, or that, changed their mind about something they thought was true and realized today maybe it's not. I certainly did. Hopefully it was valuable. If you guys have maybe things that you were taught when you were younger that have proven to not be true, I can think of, like, for me, I remember hearing as a teenager not to swim when you're on your period, which is stupid.
I remember that too.
Yeah. So stupid
things.
Yeah. So if you have something that was maybe like an old wives' tale or something that you heard, and you think it's funny now because you know how wrong it is, you want to share it with us, go to Facebook and search for She's a Full-On Monet. We have a page on Facebook, and it also has a discussion board. We would love to hear from you on this topic. I would really love to hear about it.
I would too.
Yeah, or you can comment on the blog site, she'safullonmonet.com, on the article, myths about the menstrual cycle. Yeah, because I think I'm super curious to hear what you guys have to say. Yep, and thank you as always for joining us. Yes. We really enjoy chatting with you, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. Don't forget to bookmark our site, she'safullonmonet.com, and subscribe to our newsletter. You can also find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. If you're enjoying this podcast, it helps us a lot if you can follow, rate, and review. See y'all next week.